I think the one thing, for us that's been really key is that it has to just really be authentic and organic. I think if it was a situation where you could spend money and receive the returns,
Right.
the big guy would always win. The corporate guys would just be throwing money everywhere and it would work. But I think for it to work, I think it really has to be genuine and authentic. The influencer really, in my opinion, really has to be a fan of the brand for it to really work.
Welcome back, everyone, to the School of Greatness podcast. We have Michael Mente in the house, man. Good
Thank
to see you. Super glad you're here. We got connected earlier this year. Someone mentioned me about you. I didn't know who you were until someone brought up your name. And then as I started digging in deeper, learning about you being one of the founders of Revolve, this fashion brand that's been around for 15 years now.
Almost 15 years, crazy enough.
And has now blown up. It seems like every big celebrity influencer on Instagram promotes you guys, is at some event. It doesn't matter who it is. It's like everyone is promoting you in the female fashion space. And we were talking earlier, you're gearing up close to hitting almost $1 billion in gross sales, total gross sales for the brand, which is impressive, man.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. Such an honor to be here.
Of course, man. Yeah.
Learned so much from you from the podcast and books, so it's such a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And you started, I think you said, back in 2003.
Yes.
Pre-social media, pre-Google.
Yes.
Right? Or maybe Google was around, but
they
it was
were
like
around,
small.
And they were a little smaller than Yahoo at the time. Yahoo was still actually how we learned. That was the first digital marketing we ever did was Yahoo, and that kind of put us on the map.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so you're promoting on Yahoo, and so much has evolved in terms of like marketing in the last 10, 12, 15 years, right?
Definitely. It's crazy.
When social media came around, early on, I remember it was Twitter was the big thing. Were you even using Twitter to promote, or was it not even an effective platform for you guys? Because yours is more of a visual, seeing the clothes.
Exactly.
Right?
For Twitter, that was one thing that I know so many people use it as a great tool, but I can never crack it. We can never figure it out because it just wasn't visual enough, Right. So we missed the boat when it was the sweet spot of Facebook days. Like we really were great in the Google days, but we didn't really quite get Facebook right. But then when Instagram came out, that was something that, where a lot of the things we were trying to do were really able to be leveraged in Instagram in that kind of like 2010 and beyond era. But there was definitely so many different phases of having to, evolve and get better and stay current.
Where would you say a lot of your gross sales come from Instagram right now? Or is it pretty diverse?
I think it's really diverse. And I think ultimately all of the channels kind of interact where it's like, someone may see something on Instagram, but then go on, Google to search for it, or someone may, Google something, but then ultimately see an ad elsewhere. So we're really known for Instagram at the moment because I think, a lot of the strategy is a little bit more ahead of the curve and a little bit more pioneering. We're doing a couple different things, or a strategy that other people are learning from, but that's just one layer, and then there's many other layers that have to be built. So it's just a stack. And I think that's the thing. It's not just Instagram, boom, it's all good. It's like there's the, the fundamentals of Google, which we did, back in the day. And it's still huge. I think Google's, still a massive part of our budget. And then, of course, Facebook, Instagram, email, everything.
Email is probably where you get the direct results from. When you send something out, you can see sales coming in, obviously. What made you early on, in 2003, say, I want to get into women's clothes?
What's funny was purely analytical, and like in those purely analytical. And in those days, a real good friend who's still a business partner of ours kind of showed us at the company he was working at, where you can actually see results of how many people were searching for what terms,
right? And
then you could also see really transparently how much it would cost to be listed on Yahoo, first or second or third. So there's this awesome transparency where we can see. People are searching for this when you do the
women's
actual
fashion or shirts or skirts
brand,
or whatever.
Yeah. And then you see the results, and they're like, sometimes there'll be results where like none of the results are selling the products. So we kind of like stumbled upon it, and we realized that fashion, there was a lot of people searching for fashion brands, but the fashion world was a little bit, slower to come, slower to
They were
adopt
doing
technology.
retail. They weren't doing online.
Exactly.
They were just expecting you to come into stores or whatever, or
Definitely.
print ads.
Print
or whatever,
ads.
yeah.
It was a different world. So there was like an opportunity there.
Wow.
And we tried a lot of different things, and we were like, okay. A lot of quick failures, of course, in the early days. We thought this brand's going to be big, this is going to be whatever. And it was like nothing, crickets. But then we came across, again, by chance, that designer denim ended up being like very important at that time. And that was also something where people were just hearing about it, the younger consumer, and it was hard to find in physical stores, or it was a very limited supply in physical stores. And they had to go online, and that's kind
The
of where
premium
they're.
denim.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you saw it as an opportunity more than anything. You weren't necessarily passionate about female underwear, right? You weren't like,
hey, in different ways, not selling
exactly,
it.
exactly. But you weren't like trying to say, I want to become like the new Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
You were just like, here's an opportunity that people are missing out on. This whole internet thing is taking off. There's a big opportunity, and these brands are missing out on it. But at the beginning, you didn't create your own brands, whereas now you have 12 different brands.
Yeah, I think 13 now.
13
it's crazy.
now. But then you were you were buying it wholesale and then selling it online? Were you drop shipping? Were you?
Yeah, exactly. It was buying wholesale, storing it in the house, and then shipping it to the consumer. And I think we were very lucky again that we were in the area in Los Angeles, and all the showrooms, 90% of the brands we carry have showrooms in Los Angeles. So that was another, aspect of luck that we stumbled upon, kind of, that access, and did a lot of homework there.
So you could find people, get them at a really cheap wholesale rate. They would trust you guys and build a relationship. And
it was a lot of trust building. A lot of people were like, "What the heck are you doing? Like, this is weird."
No one was doing that.
No, very, very few. Like some of the department stores, had kind of early websites that were kind of experimental, not necessarily as serious. So they existed, but not much. There was literally a lot of brands with next to nothing, or the competitors were like still quite young. They may have been like 1 or 2 years old as well. So it was kind of like early days.
Kind of like Zappos was for shoes.
Exactly. Zappos was our model. There was like something that like we did the same exact things at the same time, kind of just by observing the marketplace, and we kind of weren't aware of them. But then, of course, we start to see them blow up and become something, and we had to evolve to something else.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Did you guys launch the same year, or were they before you guys?
I think we may have launched. They may have launched maybe a year before us or so. Kind of the same period.
Yeah. Didn't Amazon buy them?
Yes, the Amazon bought them
for like $1 billion or something.
I think, maybe a little. Yeah, about $1 billion and change, and that was probably right around recession time.
2009 or something.
Yeah, I think around then. Yeah, I think I remember something about their VCs sending out a letter where everyone had to buckle down.
They needed to sell it.
Exactly.
Because how much were they doing in sales? Do you remember a year?
I don't remember, actually. I don't remember what the multiple what was going on then.
I wonder if they were reaching $1 billion in sales. You don't think they were?
I think they. It depends on the measurement.
But the revenue is.
Yeah. I think I remember reading the book, and I don't remember the exact year, but they did. I think they did hit $1 billion in gross sales prior to the acquisition.
Right. Okay. Interesting. What were you doing before all of this? Weren't you in a software business or something?
Yeah, before I was lucky enough to be in college during that first .com boom, but not lucky enough to be out in the workforce long enough to really capitalize. So I worked at a software startup, and that's where I met my business partner. The best thing that was about that whole experience, I met my business partner. This was 2001. And it was a random software startup that
right out of college.
Right out of college.
And you went to school as an engineer, or what did you go to school for?
It's funny. I went to school I went specifically to USC because they have a great entrepreneurship program. Yeah. But the funny thing is I left a year early to pursue startup work. So I never actually did the entrepreneur program. So it was actually a finance background, a finance major.
Cool.
And the cool thing is that now my business partner manages all the finances, and so it's ironic.
Amazing. So you guys met at the software company. The company didn't work out, or you just were like, let's try something else?
Yeah, it was just like 99% of the other startups of that day that were just a lot of capital flying around, and a lot of startups. And conceptually, I still think that it was software systems to help manage enterprise strategy. And I think, we still do it a little old school where it's like PowerPoint and Excel.
Yeah.
And the idea of making it a little bit smoother and easier and simplified, but also with depths of data integrated. I like the concept still, but also the methodology and things. There's a lot of challenges there. And it was also that time where selling software to corporate America was like, very exciting in like the
Sure,
90s.
sure. It was
There's
big.
a lot of big companies doing awesome things. And then now, post-internet era, that kind of model is a little bit
Right,
different.
right. Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur or start your own business growing up? Or was this something through the years that you kind of developed?
I think there was always something there. And I think it was not necessarily an entrepreneur, but it was, I think for me, the criteria was very clear is that I wanted to be in a field where like I could put as much as I can into it and get as much as, I can out of it. And there was not necessarily, time limitations or educational limitations or this very structured path where I can just go all in, assume some risk, which I guess is, very entrepreneurial. But, I thought that potentially could have happened in other paths. I get, like an engineer or something like that. That was,
Right.
a debating, becoming a programmer and working in the world from that side of things. But ended up going straight to pure entrepreneurialism, like
Sure.
out the gates.
What would you say is the biggest inspiration for you guys right now? Is
Big-
there a brand or a person that inspires you for what they're doing?
That's a tough one. I think all my examples maybe are a little bit cliche, but super amazing, man. Like Jeff Bezos is incredible.
Mhm.
Like the way he started his business and the way through the different changes of the world and the different opportunities, he's been able to grow and build and adapt as the world changes. Sees opportunities, big opportunities and pursues them, but still has an extremely long-term, very very ambitious goal. I think that's probably a lot of inspiration for a lot of people, but definitely someone that we look up to very
Sure,
much.
sure. What about Wexner? That's Wexner from Limited Brands. Is that a brand? Is that a guy that you're aware of?
Not super.
I
I
think he
think
started Victoria's Secret too. I think.
yes. I think those guys. And also Ortega at Zara.
Yeah.
Top five richest people in the world making clothes. It's
Crazy, huh?
incredible. It's incredible.
Is he from Spain? Is that what it is? Or-
Spain, yes, and
He's
that's
the top five richest
I think so. And the coolest thing to me is
for
that
Zara, huh?
yeah, I think they actually have multiple chains, but I think Zara is the
Right.
biggest one. But it's I don't know, like we looked at like a lot of things on a personal level. We look up to him in the sense that like does zero press, super low key, and I think that like my partner and I would like to do that. I don't know if you can do that in this world anymore, where
Mm-hmm.
people like where the consumer really wants to know the big corporate
Who's behind the
anonymity.
brand?
Yeah. So I think it's a different world, or else that's but that's something that we respect about him, and obviously the massive business that he's built there.
Right.
So.
What would you say is one of the biggest risks that you've taken that paid off, and the one that hurt you the most?
Hmm.
You've been doing this for 15 years now.
I think the biggest risk was really, when we first started, because we started with just our own capital, and we were, call it 2 years out of college, so whatever we can save out of for 2 years was like, all right, this is what we got. Let's figure something out.
Let's buy some clothes and
Yes,
promote it. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So we probably, it wasn't massive at the time. I mean, it doesn't sound massive, but for us, it was like the biggest bet we ever made. But like to launch the website and have like our first tester selection was probably about, I think it was $16,000 specifically. And I was like, all right, let's buy $16,000 worth of clothes, see how this goes. Worst case, I don't know what we're gonna do. Maybe we'll recover half of it on eBay or something weird like that, and like start selling them one by one somewhere or whatever. But that was kind of like that big leap of faith where it was like the minimum amount of investment we can make, but still have a big enough test where we can see if this worked. So that was probably, the biggest risk that paid off.
And what happened when you guys launched it with those $16,000 worth of
It's
units?
funny. Like the first few brands that we thought were gonna be awesome didn't work. And one of the second tier brands, which was a little bit less, significantly less known, worked for us. It was like there was like the big denim brands, and this was like a second tier denim brand, and celebrities were wearing them. It was like a little bit more culty, and that worked for us. So then we started buying more and more and more, and then because those guys were actually the only ones who would sell to us. The big brands at the time wouldn't sell to us. So we're like, we're gonna go to your competitors and see who would be interested. And then, someone believed in us, or someone needed that support and needed to sell.
We'll sell some clothes.
Yes, yeah, you have money, we'll take it. And it worked, and that was really
Wow.
what got that initial momentum. It wasn't out the gates, but it was probably like 5-6 weeks in. We're like, okay, we got something now. After it was
Wow.
yeah.
When did you realize that you actually had a business that could continue to take off? Was it right in that moment? Was it year 2 and 3 when after like testing a bunch of stuff, we were like, oh, we have a brand that did like $1 million in sales and now we can keep growing?
It's like It was early, but also maybe never in the sense that,
Really?
like, yeah, like
still today.
still
No.
to some degree, because we've been through some challenges, some interesting times where, like, in the early days, it was like, we started to sell some stuff. We started to see some consistent business, and at the first standard was, I think this can support both of us living.
Right.
That was like,
Yeah, yeah.
where we can like continue to work and we don't have to get jobs. And I think that was probably in the first 3 to 6 months or so. We're like,
Great.
we were still probably like collecting unemployment checks, just trying to figure things out at that point. So I think fairly early on,
We're making a few thousand a month, like
it
each.
covers
Yeah.
the bills. We can
Yeah,
eat. We can we can pay the rent, and then so that was kind of like the first level. But of course, there was still it's still very fragile. But then the company continued to grow. But then 2008, we almost went out of business,
Because of the recession.
Recession.
Really?
Yeah, like really, like within a 2-week period, sales dropped by 40%. And we had no financial backers. It was just us. And the whole kind of industry just kind of like massive slowdown. All of the, department stores, everyone just discounted the whole stores at 50% off. And it was just a really crazy time. So even though at that point we were, doing maybe 40 to $50 million, we were still like fighting for our lives, and we had no financial backers. And of course, that's when all the banks in those scary times, that's when all the money goes away.
Right.
So that was a challenging time too. So I think we always still have this little bit of edge of like, in '07, we thought, whoa, we're really ahead. And then '08, we're fighting for our lives. And I think now we still have that scar and that fear, like,
Really?
like that, that recession survivor mentality where it's like, got to be very protective, who knows what's
Right.
going to happen. There's always
Wow.
elements of risk, so we're always on our toes. But
That's
I think
10 years, though. It's been
Yeah.
10 years from there, but you're still like, okay, let's make sure we have money for a rainy day or for whatever, right?
Exactly.
Interesting. And then did you take on investors at some point?
Around 9 years into the business, we took on investors, and I think that was actually one thing a risk that we did not take that ended up being really good for us, and that throughout the beginning, through from the founding to the recession, we met a lot of investors and we saw a lot of interesting things, but like we just didn't feel like we can be partners with somebody. It felt like it was exciting to be like, here's you're 25 and here's like a $20 million check, and I think that took a lot of like discipline on our part to be like, no, we don't really want your money. We don't want to really partners with you. We like what we have, and we're going to protect what we have because we know you're going to have a different vision and values than we're going to have. And I think that was super important. But in 2012, we'll take the meetings from time to time, and we turned down a lot of different things. But we found someone who really understood what we were trying to do in a nuanced way. It was like a lot of the money in the times past, and I think this mistake has happened to other entrepreneurs in the fashion space when a lot of technology investors try to build it and scale it like a technology company, but really more of a consumer brand company. And I found the right investors who really we felt that understood that, and it's been great since then.
Really?
That was about it'll be 5 years ago in like 5 on the dot in like 10 days.
Wow.
So it's like it's been a good relationship.
Amazing. Are you able to share how much you raised? Is that public or
And
not?
that's public, yes. It was 40 million.
40 million from one investor or venture
One
capital fund?
one private equity firm.
Gotcha.
And it's like a little bit blended and blurred. And there was like a portion of it went to the business, and then a portion of it went to my partner and I.
Uh-huh.
And I think that there was a number of different things where it all made sense. Where after the recession, we were scared, very, very conservative, and we were leaving money on the table. We were scared to just keep putting all the money back into the business, as we did for the previous 9 years.
Yeah,
because there's no cushion. So this was the perfect situation where we can build a little bit on the side, personally, where we could be a lot more aggressive with the business again.
Sure.
And I think that mentality really, really changed the business, because since then, our growth has accelerated. Since then, the business has, in the past 5 years, the business is probably, between 4 or 5 times the size. So it's been like super beneficial for both of us. And it wasn't necessarily that money into the business, which of course helps. That's, no doubt was an important part, but it was really of the mindset of like, be aggressive again and pursue it. The opportunity's there. It's a great time to pursue things.
Do you believe that it's really challenging for a company to grow past a certain point without infusing an investment of ad and media spending? Do you think it's going to be really hard unless you're investing back into, the promotional side of things?
I guess it depends on...
And hiring and bringing on more people? Or can you
Yes.
grow with, a small group and continue to 2, 3, 4x every year?
I guess it depends on, how fast that growth is and like what type of business it
True.
is. You know what I mean? Like for us, dealing with physical products, like certain aspects have to grow. Like there's this portion of the business that has to grow as like the revenue grows, where just like things like customer service, picking and packing, things like that. But then for us, there's also other organizations that don't have to grow as much. Like this team is awesome. The company can be 3-4 times as big, and this team can grow 10% because they're built, they're amazing, they work together
Got
well.
systems, processes.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it really does, vary, but also depending on the business, we really see that, back into marketing. I think I guess it depends on the kind of marketing plans where it's like, if there is a good plan, I feel like we have a good plan. We're in invest mode where we think we have something that works, but there's been times periods in times past where there wasn't extra opportunity to invest the money. So we had to be a little bit more patient where certain channels for us, like, say a lot of the digital channels, like we have to be disciplined because if you want to put more money to work, it gets way less efficient. So it's like we're calibrated at a good level, but our brand spend, we feel actually the more you spend, it actually gets easier and there's definitely some scalability for it.
Really?
So there's these two aspects of marketing that operate, they work together, but they have like kind of different principles and different approaches, and we have to separate the two.
And when you mean the brand spend, you mean more of like the influencer events and things like that?
Influencer events and kind of like
brand recognition.
media and things like that versus like the digital side where it's like a little bit more functional, where it's like the Google and the Facebook and like the,
Now, this is something I think you guys do really well is you've figured out a way to like curate all these top influencers, whether it be from Instagram or YouTube or just social media influencers and celebrities in general. And you do these really high-end curated events for them, right?
Definitely.
Where you'll go to different destinations, you'll create content for them, you'll give them clothes, create content, bring them together, you create a unique experience. I feel like that's one of the things that I learned about you guys early on is something you did because I saw your guys' brand everywhere promoted by these influencers. Now, what's the process for that, or how much are you allowed to share of what you guys do there, and why are they effective? And do you think more people should be really tapping into influencers in general for their brand?
Yeah, definitely. This is an exciting part now of the business, and I think a part that I spend a lot of time. But for us, the interesting thing is that like it has been very organic and very long term. Where we first started doing this, first started working with influencers, in 2009, I believe.
Really?
And that was before they were called influencers. So it's kind of like it was like they were all bloggers at the time, and like everyone, and that was a platform. You have to literally create your own platform to communicate with the world, and that was like. Before Facebook was really core and before Instagram was so visual. So that was something that we've been developing and nurturing and evolving for many, many years. The world has continued to evolve, and as of course, we're staying very focused on how things go. So our previous experience and relationship with influencers, experimenting with blogs and such, really made a lot more sense with the rise of Instagram. So that created a good platform and centralized platform for all of our consumers as well as like all of the influencers to be. And as that's continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's been more and more powerful. We've done some stuff where, it's funny. Actually, after this, I'm going to go to a meeting to think about, collaborations with influencers, and the ideas are actually ideas that we tried 4 or 5 years ago and weren't as powerful, but we were a little bit ahead of the curve then. So It's been a long time spent. But I think the one thing, for us that's been really key is that it has to just really be authentic and organic. I think if it was a situation where you could spend money and receive the returns, the big guy would always win. The corporate guys would just be throwing money everywhere and it would work. But I think for it to work, I think it really has to be genuine and authentic and
unique and creative. Yeah,
exactly. Like the influencer really, in my opinion, really has to be a fan of the brand for it to really work versus attempt to sell something that they don't necessarily care about. Yeah. So I think that was super important.
Yeah. How do these events work? And when did you realize like, wow, this event was a massive success? Celebrity influencer.
It's been so gradual. I think that's the benefit. And I think that's also our mentality of like test it a little bit, invest, as minimum as possible, but enough to get a proper test and then try to scale it up. We're never too aggressive up front. So I think, a good example of this is actually yesterday the team was out in Palm Springs prepping for Coachella. And I think, we're starting to get known for, the biggest party at Coachella. And I think last year was incredible. I think we had, a massive party, super fun, thousands of people. I think it was, kind of like a rival to the actual festival, kind of unintentionally. So that was, amazing. And the thing was like, it was, we had thousands and thousands of people. It was completely free for everyone. And afterwards, like, maybe we should have charged people. But the funny thing is that it was a very humble beginning where the first Coachella event that we had wasn't really an event. I believe it was 2010, and it was with just two friends who were influencers who are still good friends to this day. We all just went and rented a house, just like friends, like everyone does. And it really started to make a little bit of sense of like we can make this not just fun. I think next year we can make it, a business marketing opportunity. So they went from two influencers, my good friends, Ami and Julie, who were actually going on a trip together only in 10 days. But then the next time we did it a little bit bigger, half a
10
dozen people.
influencers. Yeah,
Exactly. And then and then last year, I think there was, between the people that we hosted and people coming, I think it was, several, I mean, close to 500 or so, something crazy like that.
Influencers?
Yes. So it's just crazy now.
Holy cow. 500 influencers will come to an event.
It was like, I think the key was just try to deliver something that like we would want to go to.
Of course.
So we had
Yeah.
a mini festival. So we had like Rick Ross perform and Migos perform and, Ray Shremmerd and, actually Drake ended up coming and Leo was there and Kendall was there, Kendall Jenner and it was like that. And it was just like, we got to host people, show them an authentically good time that we would want to come to. Like, that's kind of the goal. Like, would we line up to go to this party? If we aren't here, are we going to be, FOMO?
Right.
And I think that's kind of like the standard. And I think
Yeah.
ultimately, really being in the eyes of, delivering something to them. And I think ultimately, it comes back.
Of course, yeah. So tell me the model of like a trip you're going to be doing. Like you're going on a trip soon. How does that model work? How many influencers will go? What do you provide for them? Is it more about like just having a good trip and experience to some exotic location where you've got video and photographers taking great content for them that they can use? And if they're wearing the clothes, great. Kind of how does the whole thing work? How much would it cost?
See, I think we've developed a way where our methodology is like we can do it on different scales. So over the course of the last year, the smaller, probably the smallest one may have been maybe like 5 or 6. The biggest one will be a month in the Hamptons with like maybe 70, every weekend for 4 weeks we'll do, and there'll be maybe 12 influencers per weekend. So we've developed a way where it's scalable, where we don't have to do a month-long thing, where we can do a 3 or 4 day, event.
Sure.
I think that's also the benefit of we've been able to, figure out the nuances of that. And each time is, there's core principles, but then there's a lot of things that are completely different. But I think the core.
Some people you're paying, other people they're getting just like swag and they're getting their trip paid for, and it depends on kind of like the level of person it is. Or
it's a total range. It really depends on the people where the people that we work with will be literally the biggest fashion influencer on the planet, or sometimes on one of the trips it'll be like someone who's been working with us for many, many years is, literally like 0.01% of that person, but still is just
up and coming,
abandoned,
a good little community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a whole range of people. So it's, entire spectrum. But really, it's just like, for us, it's so cool in that like the concept of just like living your best life. It's also this combination of what do we think is awesome? Because it's probably going to be, relevant to them, and it's going to be relevant to our consumer. A mistake we always used to do is like, what would other companies do? And then when we looked in the mirror, like, what do we really want to do? And we started like, oh, maybe we should, go here and do that, or maybe we should go to Croatia for the summer and do this. And we're like, okay, let's try it out.
Yeah.
We built on some successes, and it worked awesome. So now we're like, okay, what else do we want to do? I think it is like the combination of really showing people a genuinely good time. I think that when you see the photos, there's just a sense of fun, and like people are really enjoying themselves. And I believe it's because people really are enjoying themselves. That really shows. Of course, the visual imagery, of course, is an important part of it. It wouldn't be as exciting mixing in with just like us at
Sure.
Shake Shack or whatever,
Right,
maybe, what I mean?
sure.
But having like a very beautiful kind of thing, aspirational but still accessible kind of a lifestyle that's genuinely fun. And I think ultimately, like the way I look back to, and of course, I think this is different for everyone's brand, but I think what we sell is like a premium aspirational product that's still accessible, something that you aspire towards and you crave, but also something that's, still inclusive that a large portion of the market can really
Mm-hmm.
afford. And this type of product is meant for being social in the sense that, we sell all apparel categories, but really it's like that feeling you get when you put like, as a dude, like whether it's hanging out with your friends or going out to like a party or
Mm-hmm.
like you're going to like a really business event, you put on your nice shirt or jacket and then
You feel
you just
good.
feel good. Or you're even just going to the gym, you're like, you got your nice gym clothes, you're like, I'm ready to work.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the kind of feeling of fun and kind of
Mm-hmm.
socializing that we try to capture with kind of just our broad marketing. That's what our
Yeah,
brand is
it's
about.
great. It's great. Now, if you're, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that do listen, and for those that haven't tapped into influencer marketing or celebrity marketing yet, but they want to tap into it. Maybe they don't have these massive budgets,
Hmm.
but they've got a little bit of money to spend, and they may be in fashion or some other type of business. Doesn't matter. Any type of brand. How would you suggest is a good way to start approaching influencers and celebrities in order to get them to promote their brand or be a part of their brand? Is it
Hmm.
through, because I get sent swag all the time and I'm like, I just throw it away.
Yeah.
So what's the creative way that you think works for you guys that any brand, small or big, could use as like reaching out to potential influencers
I think like that
and
at
building
this,
those relationships? Because you've done an amazing job at keeping the relationships too, right? Sustaining
yeah,
those relationships.
I think that's a big part of it. That's an important part.
Yeah.
But like actual, like, in this day and age, it's easy to actually contact them, whether you're like DM or
Yes.
LinkedIn or whatever research you
Twitter,
can
whatever.
do.
Yeah.
So it's easy to like establish that. But I think it's like one, there's a whole range of influencers from like, super mega to like, micro and local.
Mm-hmm.
They are powerful in their own ways. So I think it's finding, first finding the influencers that truly resonate with the brand, understanding what, your brand is about and then finding the people that really represent that. I think that, it has to be real. It's not just bigger the better, like, that
Mm-hmm.
more numbers the better. Of course that's relevant, but at the same time we all have budgets and we can't just work with the biggest and
Yeah.
best. There's plenty of people that I would love to work with that I just feel like it would be, financially irresponsible to do
Mm-hmm.
so. So I think finding the influencers.
Like Kim Kardashian might be like way too much for a
Exactly.
post, right?
Yeah, and it's like you can do it. It's possible. I'm sure like a lot of us can do it. But is it going to make sense? Does she really represent the brand in that
Yeah,
right way?
right.
Maybe there makes sense for some brands that, where her personal brand is in complete alignment with, the
Sure.
brand. But I think that has to be there. And then just approaching people as like genuine fans, where it's like, people that we work with, we really respect and admire. There's people that we don't work with because they're just, not necessarily are, the type of people that we want to work with, but like the people that we really work with are people that we're genuine fans as well. And I think that'll come across
Mm-hmm.
as important that what they're doing, mirrors and reflects and is aligned with what, we're trying to do
Mm-hmm.
and finding those right people. And I think that sense of like, you know, upfrontness of, attempting to work and professionalism with that genuineness of like, I'm really a fan of what you
Right,
do.
right.
I think we can do this something awesome together. And also thinking long term where it's not just one and done. Can you tag me or can we do
Right.
this? But like, how can we work together in mutually beneficial ways
Mm-hmm.
that, and I think that's an important thing that,
What can you offer them?
yes. And like,
Yeah.
that's when, I guess that's like that's the core of business, right? Where it's like, you're building greater than the parts. Like together, you guys are more powerful than you guys are, alone, the influencer and the brand or business partners or whatever. And I think that's something to always keep in mind as well. Is like,
Yeah.
how can you support them? And if the brand alignment is there, if the brand and product or service, is aligned with the influencer, then it should be, quite clear that
Sure.
both can build together.
Yeah, and I'm making an assumption here. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming you can reach out to them and say, hey, we'd love to do, just a free photo shoot or video shoot, lifestyle of like just you and your day, and we're happy to give you some of the clothes, or we can just give you some great photos that you can use. Might be something that you do. I'm not even sure, but
No, totally on that level. Like there's, especially when it's very scrappy and bootstrap days,
Yes.
that's exactly how we'd approach things. Where it's
Yeah.
like, we don't, we definitely can't, we don't have this budget. We don't even have a budget, especially when we
Right.
first experimented. And I think when we did actually start working with influencers, it was zero budget. It was just like, we can't allocate money to, because this is just like, could be completely wasted. So
Yeah.
it was like, how do we do it in ways that are effective, that will give us a conviction to put money behind it? And it was done in a very organic, low budget, kind of just like person-to-person connection where
Right.
how can we build together? But
That's
yes.
cool. And are you reaching out personally to these influencers, or is it other people on your team that are kind of
At this
reaching out?
point now, it's a lot of other people. I think like over the past, I think there's some loose numbers. I think over the past year, we may have worked with, around 5,000. So it's like become a little bit more process and system
You
oriented
can't do
now.
that all day yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like a lot of, majority, if not all of the people that we work with that are the most established people and the most powerful people are genuine personal relationships that we've developed over the years. Or it's like, I know, I just ran into someone and I'm friends with her sister. Like we'll like spend time and, do running together or whatever it may be.
Sure.
And we're friends, and have relationships outside. So
That's great. Now, so much has evolved in your business and the industry where you were just selling other people's clothes for the first however many years to you decided to do your own brand, right? You started to hire
Yes.
your own designers in-house, manufacture, create your own brands. Now you have 13, I think you said.
Yes.
What's the challenge been? I guess since like 2012, it seems like thousands of new brands.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
almost seems like there's 1,000 new brands every year that come out in fashion. Maybe I'm wrong here, but it just seems like tons of new brands. And then every influencer now wants to have their own brand.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with that competition? Is that a challenge where maybe some of the influencers you've been working with and sponsoring or helping out now are assuming some of them have their own legging lines or whatever, their own brands. Is that right?
Definitely.
How do you manage that when each influencer is now like, you know what? I'd rather not promote you anymore because I got my own brand.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like?
I think it's dynamic, and I think every situation is unique. And like you, no doubt, there are so many brands coming out, and it seems like, across, in the fashion industry, but across everywhere. I feel
Everywhere.
like everything's so much more accessible. Becoming, manufacturing isn't how challenging it was 20 years ago. It's really
easier to
it's
do
a little
for
bit more
people.
commodified. So I think levels the playing field, which is like, amazing in many ways. With the, why we're able to create our own brand so powerfully is that we have the competitive advantage is that we have a lot of data. We can see that, oh, wow, people are really rapidly clicking on this category and we don't have a good selection here. Let's go make some stuff. So it's not really like what the designer and the human creative is just, I want to do this. It is
What's the market
data and
want?
opportunity, then layered in with someone who can interpret that very well. So that's why we're able to
So you're almost
launch
doing
these
this.
brands.
You're doing the same thing you did in 2003. You're
Pretty
finding
much.
what's the data, what's the opportunity, what do people want, and then you're selling them that.
Yes.
You're just doing it
the core
yourself now.
principles is
Yeah.
the core. You're right. That's it. I actually didn't put that together, but the core principle is exactly the same. It's
When
like
people wanted premium denim then, you
Yes.
found the right partner, and now you're just like, oh, they want this now, let's go create it.
exactly, and then now there's a more nuanced version of like
Right.
say with denim where it's like people want this specific type of denim, and we knew it, so then we created it, and it's been
It's
great.
crazy.
But I didn't put that parallel there. But yeah, all we're doing is really just listening to the consumer and trying to understand and give them what they want.
Mm-hmm. And what's the biggest challenge for you right now that you face? Is it all the competition? Is it just there's so many brands out there? Is it the influencers are now starting their own thing and they're taking their audience with them? Is it just scaling? What's the challenge for you?
I think the real thing is that like this hasn't always been the case, but I think that right now we're in a position where in times past I always would identify, okay, this is a gap that we need to fill. In times past it was, like we weren't always good at like kind of like influencer marketing. So it was like we have to figure this out. Before we had no clue about how to make clothes, so we had to figure it out. And now I feel like it's we've been able to layer this stacks of different competencies, and I think that now the challenge is making sure they all work together and are able to grow and scale at the same time. It's a different type of a challenge, and I think that's why I'm still so excited about everything, because now that as soon as you figure something out, there's a new challenge, and there's always opportunity for growth. We're blessed with,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of opportunities. So,
Yeah.
so really coordinating everyone as like a no longer scrappy startup entrepreneur. Now it's more like a little bit more of a larger company CEO kind of responsibilities of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, management and training and culture and
Mm-hmm.
integration. I think, but it's fun because my team is awesome. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of like camaraderie, and there's not a lot of cattiness and infighting and politics. It's like everyone is focused and everyone enjoys working with each other. So it's like kind of like, you know, like a high functioning sports team when we're all in
course.
it together and rolling. So
That's
it's
great.
challenging but fun.
That's great. How many employees do you have?
I think I think actually just got a report yesterday. So I think 749.
Amazing. And how have you evolved into, again, being an entrepreneur by yourself to now running an organization with that many employees? Where did that take from you?
It was like, you know, that's the other benefit is that, you know, the fact that I have been doing this for, you know, 14, 15 years, I've had the luxury of time to grow. It didn't have to, it wasn't like overnight the whole world changes or 1 year later the company, you know, explodes and I'm in a totally different space. It's been this steady, long journey. So before it was really roll up your sleeves, figure out how to do the, you know, the process, figure out how to do the work, do a lot of it yourself, and then build the process and get other people to do it and make it, you know, scalable. And then I've had to do that. My partner and I have had to do that in different areas over time. Where
Mm-hmm.
first it was website design and buying, and then later on it became
Mm-hmm.
more the planning aspect of things and digital marketing. Then later on it ended up being brand marketing, and later on it ended up being um, manufacturing clothes. So that for me, that part, building the different aspects and competencies of the organization took a lot of time. And then now I do feel that the team is good. All the positions I need are there. There's a few things that we're layering
Sure,
in,
sure.
and now it's just like the orchestra of everyone working together
Right,
well,
right.
which is chaotic.
Right, exactly. Well, who would you say is the most influential person in your life growing up? Someone who made you who you are today.
I mean, this is like pretty, two aspects, but early on, you know, my dad was definitely influential on me in that, like, maybe it's in a different way in that, you know, in an Asian kind of household, and it was definitely,
So you grew up in Malaysia, is that right?
I was born in Malaysia, but
Yep.
grew up out over here.
Okay.
And I think in the Asian, at least in the you know, culture that I grew up, it was a little bit more of like stoic mask. You know, it was really not share your emotions. It was really that, you know, so it wasn't really through like communication and kind of like, you know, traditional, you know, teaching. But my dad,
Showing affection and communicating your affection and things like that.
yeah, and like really like teaching a specific lesson or really, but what he really showed me, you know, hands down was, you know, hard work. Yeah, it was just work ethic. And that was one thing that I knew was this, you know, it was a responsibility. And I'm, you know, happy to see that role model. It was like, you know, times were tough. Well, the only job is in Santa Barbara. So we got to commute to Santa Barbara. Like, and then work. And then, oh, during that times are tough, you still have to work on the weekends, to do work on the weekends just to, you know, stay, you know, keep level and
Yeah.
gotta do what you gotta do. So I think that was like, that really, really, you know, resonated. I really internalized that, and I think that till this day, that really, really influenced the person
Sure.
I've grown up to be. And I
Sure.
think, you know, actually, I don't know if I've ever told him that. I hope he listens and
Yeah.
hears that. I'll,
That's great. Send it to him.
Yeah.
And what about your mom? Biggest lesson she taught you?
I think she really was able to teach me, you know, a lesson, but skill was really listening and really understanding people. I think it was like, you know, she is the type of person where it's just like, we'll talk a lot, but also is always able to develop a lot of relationships with people in terms of just like having that empathy and understanding where
Yeah.
they're coming from and how you can, you know, help people out and you know, why people are acting a certain way and how you can and how do you build. So I think those two things together are like the blended are, you know, kind of the foundation of why am I able to,
Yeah.
you know, grow and succeed.
Sure, sure. What do you think it's going to have to take from you to still learn in order to take your business to where you want it to be?
What do you mean by that?
What do you still need to learn?
What do I say?
Or what lesson do you need to take on? Or what do you need to let go of within yourself in order for you to take your business to the next level you want it to be at?
Well, I think the one thing that, you know, very recently I've started to focus on is that work ethic aspect was always there and it's
Yeah.
there, but it's also like balancing that. It's like you can't be like at 10 all the time. And you can't push everyone to be 10 all the time. It's not, we don't want to, I don't want to succeed, I don't think it's capable for us to succeed in the next level by just everyone outworking everyone. In the earlier days, I felt like it's essential. Like that was like the core competency in the day one, where like we're two guys with nothing to do but work all day and all the energy in the world. So that was, but now to get to that next level, it can't be just like, our teams are happy, and I don't know if they're happy, but our teams are committed that when it's time to go, it's go time.
Yeah.
And everyone, looks back like, we're going to do this. And there's like a really sense of like, we're doing this together.
Sure.
But I'm trying to now at this point really minimize those times where everyone has to be like buckled down and duke it out and really slug through the challenges. I think now it's really like, what's the elegant, simple way for us to accomplish the goal without burning out the team and challenging everyone and having to push everyone that to, succeed just on that sheer willpower. I think it's going to be, how do we succeed and achieve, even greater results, but in an elegant, fluid way that's smoother and more enjoyable for all of us. Because if it's not enjoyable, like what's
the point?
Yeah, what's the point?
I like that. And how do you, there's in a world where it seems like every entrepreneur wants to start a company and then sell it within 3 to 5 years. How have you been consistently excited about your business for 15 years? When it seems like you're kind of like an old business now if you're around for 15 years.
Yeah,
you didn't sell yet, right?
Definitely.
So how have you stayed, and what's your advice as well? How have you stayed inspired every year? And what's your advice to younger entrepreneurs that are like, I just want to build this and sell it in 3 years?
I don't know. I think it's a number of different things. I think it's really complex. Like, I think one thing for me is that the people on our team through and through, the people I work with directly or the people that I continue to meet in the organization, like there's a culture that resonates and I really enjoy it. Like I can't imagine not working with these people, I think that's something there. And also I think also from a business perspective, we've always been fans of the long term. And I think ultimately when you're focused on the long term, when you're executing in the present, I think that's when the big magical results can happen. I think that, that was something that we, my partner and I, from day one, and it's interesting, we were like 22, 23, I was like, let's build a business we want to own forever. When you want to own it forever, if you ever change your mind, it's going to be very valuable versus trying to build a business that you're trying to sell. Well, if the people you're trying to sell to aren't interested or if the world changes, I think honestly, that was influenced by us coming into the workforce and the entrepreneurial kind of like community in the first recession in 2000, 2001. We were in that world where everyone was trying to build this company to sell it to so-and-so or to do so-and-so. And it was really kind of like a short-sighted kind of play. Yeah. And if you can't, do that and you can't go there, the world changes, then you end up with nothing.
The business collapses.
Exactly.
Yeah, you get burnt out, you're bored, you're whatever.
Yeah. So, or like the potential acquirers end up, which you have no control of, their business may evolve, So with us, we always had that long-term mentality. And I think that's, to this day, I think
Smart.
One of the rare ones who says that, like, I think I want to do this forever. I think we're also just so lucky that the opportunities keep coming and coming. And I think, there's a wealth of opportunities that we can pursue. And it's like really our responsibility to stay focused on what we have to do. But I could definitely see myself doing this forever as long as, the opportunities for growth are still there.
I like it, man. So what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who want to start their own thing? What advice would you say to them? Is there any principles you would say? Is it to build something to hold on to forever? Is it that you would want to? What else would you offer advice to?
I think there's so many different ways. And I think there's so many, I think ultimately understanding what you want to do. Because I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with building a business and trying to sell it. You know what I mean? Certain type of businesses and opportunities may be ripe for that. And I think that might be, really smart in certain zones. So I think that really, aligning what your goals are with kind of what the market opportunity is and making sure that those go together. It could, whether it could be starting like, the awesome donut coffee shop that's like really awesome and you're into, and you delight your customers. Is that like, a success to you, or is it like you have to scale it to be 500 locations, Nothing wrong with either of those, but it's like understanding that and ensuring that the opportunities out there really make sense.
Sure. I like it, man. This is called the three truths. We're
Uh-oh.
getting to the final questions here. It's called the three truths, and this is if it's the end of the day for you, many years from now, you've done everything you want to do in your life. You've built the business you want it to be. You've achieved everything. You've made your parents proud for achieving what they want you to do, because I know that's important in the Asian community, right?
Of course.
You've done all those things, but for whatever reason, it's all erased. Everything's gone. And all the interviews you've done, the content you put out there is gone. So people don't have your information, your words anymore. You got a piece of paper and a pen to write down three things you know to be true, the three lessons you've learned from your life that you would pass on to other people. And this is all they would have to remember you and your information by. What would you say are those three lessons or three truths?
It's a challenge, and I wish I was more prepared here. Well, I think one thing, for me that's important is, we're always so metric focused, myself, no doubt, but ultimately the human aspect of things is super important. So it's not just the business that we built and the numbers that we achieved, which is something I think about, every day, but it's also who I did it with and how they were uplifted and benefited. I think that's super important, to me and to the way we go about business, is that it's, all of us doing this together. Everyone who's committed to what we're doing, we're committed to their lives and their happiness. And that's something I'm extremely proud of in our company. So it's like not just what we did, but it's also who did I do it with and how did they benefit?
Yeah, it's great. So that's number one.
Yes.
Okay. What's the next two?
Can you reframe the question, or can you frame the question again? Because
three truths.
Three truths.
Or three lessons that you would give back to the world. So what's a lesson that you would want everyone to think about?
Yes. The other one, I think this is maybe a little bit newer lesson for me, is that you don't have to sacrifice your personal life and your health for your professional career. And I think that's something that I see a lot of people doing. I've been the guiltiest of it at so many different times, whether it's not being able to be in a good relationship because it's so secondary to the professional, or sometimes neglecting health because the professional career takes, precedence. I think it all goes together. I think there's a harmony when all three of those aspects come together, and that's when, a healthier, happier life really comes together. When you're healthy, you have great relationships, and you have a thriving professional career. There's no priorities, it's all one. And I think that was learned that one the hard way.
Right, yeah. 12 years of slugging it out, yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, that's number two. And the third truth or lesson?
The third truth or lesson. I think those two cover quite a bit. You can give me a second here.
Sure.
I have to do like a edit clip and fast forward 30 minutes.
Any piece of advice that you would give to people, your younger self, if you could tell your younger self one last piece of advice or lesson of how to live their life.
I think this is somewhat related to the second point. And if this is something that's like I'm trying to put a lot more attention to, is that the hard work and the grind and that effort, there is obviously huge value to that. But at some point, that's not the goal. And actually enjoying it is like, this is super cliche, but enjoying the work, enjoying everything is more important than achieving it. It's no point of we build a business that's this big or whatever, how many billions of dollars. If I didn't enjoy the process of building it, then it was, rather pointless. And I think, super cliche, but also challenging to really internalize. And that's a personal challenge. I think, that's for me, this year was a very challenging year in terms of like professional challenges. It was a very successful year in terms of the metrics that, the goals that we've achieved. But other aspects, I think I didn't do as good of a job in that I really was a little bit too intense and focused, which detracted from my ability to enjoy it. And looking back, it should have been a more fun year looking back. And I really feel like I didn't really, wasn't quite, fully present to really enjoy what a great year. It was really, I look back and remember the hard work and the struggle, which is important, but it should be mixed in with that enjoyment and fun. So that's the goal this year, is to maintain this intensity, but also enjoy it much, much more. And I think that's something which goes back to that, it's very similar to that balancing of everything.
What are you committed to creating then every month to ensure you do that?
I think like
How are you going to keep yourself accountable on that?
it's the balance. I think it's in terms of like prioritizing ensuring health, and it's also so like working out and eating well. The super fundamental basics. Investing more into personal life. I think it's easy for me to just work and not as a single guy, just not put as much energy to nurture that aspect of life, and really make a little bit more better planning. Like I can plan work and like I have plans, that go out many years and things, but like I'm bad about planning like how am I going to enjoy this weekend? Or can I get my friends together to go on a vacation in 3 months? Those are the things that are always like the best moments, right? If you look back and those are the things that in time past, those are my favorite times when you're traveling with your friends. But at the same time, I don't even put that much energy to make those moments happen. So I think that's another thing that I'll try to do a lot better.
That's great. That's great, man. Where can we connect with you online personally? Where do you like to hang out?
I'm probably more, Instagram. So at Mente, you can find me there. Drop by, say hello. I'm always excited to hear from everybody. And of course, if you're into, women's clothing and men's clothing, we at Revolve.com is, the main business. And actually, we have a designer business, higher end designers, FWRDforward.com as well, where our men's selection there is. Lewis, you got to check it out. That's our men's selection.
FWRD.
Yes.
.com is the men's stuff.
It's men's and women's, but the men's selection is real good over there.
It's not on Revolve.
There's some stuff, but Forward is really,
it's got the
good stuff.
Yeah. All right. I'm going there and picking up some stuff tonight. Awesome. Well, before I ask the final question, Michael, I want to acknowledge you for everything you've built over the last 15 years and your ability to be aware and recognize the things that you've struggled with. I think there's a lot of people when they build something that big, they lose themselves and they forget to take care of their health and their personal relationships. So for your clarity and awareness around the importance of humans and your team, importance of humans in your life and your health is a great reminder for all of us. So I want to acknowledge you for that and all you've done to inspire people.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for everything. We've all, I have a big group of friends who, we all like to, help each other. And you've done so, your work, the books and the podcasts, we've all learned so much from. And I think a lot of that, a lot of the things that, I was mentioning, I feel is because you think about it in a similar way. There's like very few sources where I can be inspired or I can learn about, health, relationships, and business. There's a lot of business, but it's treated separately. Right. But I think, I've learned so many times from you and from Mike, my own experiences that like the same things that make, us weak in our personal life also are the same things that make us weak in our professional life. And I think integrating those lessons learned are things that I've really started to see, as I get older versus it's usually compartmentalized.
Sure.
And I think I see a lot of that from you, and I see that, from the books. I see a lot of, a lot of the challenges with masks. It's in your personal life, it's in your professional life, and different ones. And so it's learned so much from you. So honored and happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. We've got one final question. We'll let you go, and that's what's your definition of greatness?
I think greatness is, comes from, happiness, and happiness comes from making other people happy. I think, and ultimately being your authentic self and appreciating and being happy with the person you are and the life that you have in front of you.
There you go, Michael Mente. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thanks,
it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
This was great.